My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
Yeah, hey, everybody. There we go. Welcome to the 901s podcast, episode 72. We are the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous rapper, our resident influencer and IG star, shooting the breeze, talking UCF sports. Remember to like, subscribe, YouTube, IG, and check out all the other 70-plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle. You can also hear us on the Big 12 Huddle, 4th in Florida, and a new stream that we're just going to use as a running joke because we've never made the new stream. But we are live today, and this is not Roger. It is the infamous rapper, and I am doing it by myself. No, I'm kidding. We have some people here, but Roger is not here today, and Alan, unfortunately, is not here today. So what we're going to do is start off with Nobra.
Hey now.
Hey. I'm going to say is I saw a kitten on your shoulder earlier in the pre-show. Is that kitten going to be coming in to the show? Is this a new part of our podcast? I would love that. Oh, this come on. What's their name? Gooby. Okay. We'll get a background of Gooby in later, but since you're usually supposed to be in the background, we'll just let everyone else in. Up next, we have our resident 7-footer who can always dunk on me, Ben Stout. Ben?
What's up? I'm glad to be, unlike last week, we're talking after a UCF basketball win, a dominating one, and we're going to get to that later, but I'm glad that we got that. And then hey, we got a little something to look forward to tomorrow night as well, so we can get into that also.
Oh, there's that small little game in the small little
yeah, just
the country.
This small.
No one really. It's not a place people want to visit it or anything, right? So we will be talking hoops, but because the staff is finalized and set and tweeted, it's still Twitter to me, it's not X. We are going to bring in Neal finally, who's out of all the medical things that he always does, and he's actually home and not in the hospital. So that's great. Hey, Trey, what's going on?
It's been a minute.
And by not in a hospital, it means like not working at a hospital.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's healthy and okay, luckily for us.
I am healthy and okay, but my job has been extremely busy lately. I've been on, like, I think a couple of weeks ago was me and Alan, and everybody else was busy. And then last week, I think I was gone, and then now Alan's. It's that time of the year. It's convenient when football's over. Everybody starts getting a little bit busier. It seems like.
So I'm gonna save my text talk for basketball because that's all we really talked about. We didn't have a back and forth chat about Alex Grinch or anything on the staff. So this is what we were going to talk about today because we have Trey, and since Trey is kind of has worked with some of the staff. My thought is let's start with football, and always for those of you who are live, we are streaming live. If you are live, go drop something in the comments. If you want to drop some words in the podcast, if you want to ask questions, feel free to bring them in. Let's start off with the staff. So the staff is set. We have our DC Alex Grinch. We have Mike Dawson, who is defensive run game coordinator and edge. We're getting very specific with our staff, right? We have Kenny Martin, who's DTs. We have Brandon Harris, defensive backs. Mark D'Onofrio, We'll see if Trey's going to replace my pronunciation on that with linebackers, and Pete Alamar, a special teams coordinator. On the offense, Steve Cooper is our offense coordinator. Sean Beckton Sr. is our associate head coach of wide receivers. Sean Clark, former head coach. On offensive line, Mackenzie Milton, you all know who that is our quarterback coach. Jimmy Beal with running backs, and Zach Duvall, the director of strength and conditioning. And of course, we all know our former and now current head coach is Scottfrost. So my first thought is this, Trey, you've worked with a couple of these, you've been coached by a couple of these gentlemen in your time playing. Why don't you kind of talk about your relationships and what you've seen as a player that the student athletes, or whatever we want to call them now, might see when they are in front of these coaches, when they are looking at film, when they're doing workouts and all those things?
Yeah, I know. So right now it's winter conditioning. So they are Coach Duval's best friend. That's who they see in the morning at 6 a.m. That's who they're going to see at lunch around noon, 1 o'clock. That's who they're probably going to see when they're sleeping, because they're going to be terrified of working out and doing those that circuit workout. But I mean, that's what they're living right now. Coach Duval, he's awesome. I mean, you could ask anybody from those years. You know, he helped the development of a lot of football players, a lot of stud players, and even some of those, you know, Coach O'Leary overholds. And I consider myself one. He helped take our game to the next level. Prepared us, because Coach Frost knows him personally. So that he's awesome. Coach Duval, his kids are awesome. I mean, just to think that was like what, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, almost. Like they were kids in there. Now they're teenagers. Like, it's crazy how time flies. But yeah, that's who they're doing right now. And just some of the guys I was with Coach Cooper. I'll start offensively. Coach Cooper, Coach Beck. Those guys are great coaches. Cooper's a little bit younger, so I always called him. He's like a mastermind, a little genius. That's how a lot of these younger guys are. They're really good with the X's and O's. They watch a lot of tape, and they take a lot of stuff and put their own tweak. So he's really good. But it'll be interesting to see, you know, in this offensive coordinator role. I only knew him when he was like an analyst, and then he became a tight end position coach. So, you know, good for him to take that next step. But, you know, it's a big next step. So we'll see. We know it's going to be Coach Frost's offense, but what kind of wrinkles can he add? What kind of wrinkles can he bring to the table? Coach Beck,
was Coop at Nebraska with you?
He was at Nebraska. Yeah, he wasn't at UCF. He was at Nebraska my first year. And I think he was there for a few more years after that. But, yeah, so he's always been a bright guy, super smart, just an X and O's kind of guy. But in my opinion, Frost only hires players, coaches. He doesn't hire guys who, you know, don't agree with, you know, being that kind of leader of their room.
Right.
So I'll just say that now. All these guys have to be players, coaches. They have to seem that way. I don't think Frost would hire him. Coach Beck is Coach Beck. I mean, we all know him. We all love him. He's been here. He's the OG, as we call him. He played here way back when in the black and white TV is what we used to call it. And, you know, he's coached a lot of great guys here. So he bleeds UCF. We don't have to worry about him ever giving it his all, because he's going to do it. Defensively that I've been with, Coach Dawson, really hard-nosed guy. And that's what you need, especially on the D-line up front. You need somebody who's going to get up in you and pause and, you know, just rile you up. You know, you have to be tough. You have to be a physical guy to play for him. He doesn't like a lot of the nonsense, which you need that. You know, you need that, especially in that room, because you're dealing with a lot of alphas is what I like to call it. Those, you know, 6'3", 6'4", 280, 295-pound guys who can squat a truck. You know, those kind of guys, you need somebody that can rein them in a little bit. But he's also a really good coach. But overall, you know, I played with Mackenzie, so, you know, I haven't seen him as a coach. But if he's anything like a player, you know, we're in good hands as well. But overall, you know, I like the staff just from those guys. Coach Grant, I know Kenny Martin was a great keep from Coach Malzahn's staff. Everybody was a big fan of keeping him. Brandon Harris, Mark, I don't know how to pronounce his name either, Josh. D'Onofrio, I don't know.
D'Onofrio
yeah,
sounds right.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've just noticed is a lot of these guys have experience. and at different stops. Some of them have been coached at really high levels. Some of them have been really dominant in that middle tier G5-ish levels and have coached at, Power 5 schools as well. So I think it's a good, healthy blend. He didn't necessarily go with taking everybody he knows in the staff, whether I don't know if he wanted to do that or not, whether the AD was kind of like, hey, I don't want you bringing everybody, I want you to kind of mix it up, because that's just the reality of it. That's what they do. That's the business now. The AD doesn't just say, take who you want. That's not really how it goes. They're like, hey, let's vet, let's bounce off ideas. Let's bounce off people who we're going to bring, who you like, things like that. But yeah, if it were me, I see a lot of experience. I think that's a lot of years, years in the tooth that can just bounce off so many ideas from so many. They're like, to me, in this prime era of they've coached, old school football. They've been in new school football. So they know the healthy blend. A lot of these guys have coached in the NFL with Coach Frost. I know Coach Grinch, I think, has some. Coach Dawson has some NFL experience. Coach Duval has, seen NFL players and worked them out. I think that kind of stuff matters when you want to build a program. And, it starts at the top. Coach Frost, that's my guy. He's going to take care of them. That's one thing those guys won't ever have to worry about is Coach Frost is going to take care of them on the field, off the field. And truthfully, that's all you can ask for. Now the NIL stuff that's a whole different ball game. But, if your coach loves you and he's making sure that you're all right and taking care of you and trying to get you the best, that's all you can ask for in this time period. So I'm impressed. It'll be interesting, though, because, again, right now they're just named. But when we get to that early September, late August, it's going to be what can you guys put on the field. And I think they're going to put on a great product. It might not be in 2 years, but it'll be there.
Yeah, I like what you said, Trey, there about it being a healthy blend. It seemed like I don't even think necessarily as excited as the fan base is that Scottfrost is back. I don't know if that he would have been able to sell the fan base on bringing all of the gang back together from those years. Because I think it would have shown to the fan base and I think the reason why he didn't do this because he knows that this is true and he wouldn't want to do it this way is I think it would have shown to the fan base that he hasn't really matured or become more ingrained in the college football world than he actually is, which we know that he is now, right?
Yep.
He has a wiser understanding of what it takes to win at a higher level. Whereas, back in 2016, 2017, we were able to be just kind of that disruptor, come out of nowhere, sleeping giant type thing. Now we're just at a different, level. And I think that this staff reflects that. What I really like, though, and I've heard it from former players, I just heard it from you. We've talked about it before, over text messages or whatever, but it's just a guy like Zach Duval, I just think I just heard nothing. I mean, you just said it as well, Trey, but I've heard nothing but great things about, we talk about Scottfrost being as Shaquem calls him, right, a culture keeper. It just feels like from everything that I've heard about Zach Duval, he's absolutely a culture keeper, right? He's somebody who's going to solidify that through and through. And some of the things that we've seen also on this staff, I think, are a good blend of guys like Becton, guys like Mackenzie Milton, some of the I want to call them more lower level or analyst stuff that's not even on this graphic that was posted today in UCF Football Twitter. You just got guys that have ties to UCF that can kind of bring that or bridge that gap, if you will, as to what it's like to be not only a part of what Scott Frost is trying to do at UCF, but kind of a part of what it's all about to be a UCF, a part of that culture here in Orlando. I mean, I just think that you've got guys like Kenny Martin, you've got guys like Sean Becton, obviously KZ, Brandon Harris to a point, through, kind of he's adjacent to that.
Yeah.
But certainly, and then of course Duval. But I just really like the mix, and I agree with you also about the experience. I mean, when you got a guy like Sean Clark that was a head coach at Appalachian State, which is not a pushover when it comes to college football, and I think he's such a great example because he knows what it's like to shock the world and then have expectations behind that where you're expected to win, but you're expected to win regardless of what level you're at. You're expected to win year in and year out with the amount of resources that you have, which are limited at App State, just like they're limited at UCF right now, but even more so, 5 years ago at UCF.
Yeah.
And certainly when he was the head coach of App State, he knows what that's like. And so I think it's kind of like these types of guys, they have this experience of doing more with less resources. And then you give these guys that resource and it feels like they're not going to waste it. And even what you mentioned is true about the AD probably having a little bit more say in this coaching staff. And if that's the case, which we don't know for sure exactly how much of that the case is, I would be very encouraged if that was the case, because it shows that there's already a good level of collaboration between those two guys, Timo and Scottfrost. And the limited things that we've seen in press conferences, all that, it seems like both of those guys are very much open to that. So I wouldn't be surprised to hear that it's been a big collaboration between those two. But it also speaks to our previous staff, I think, where, and we're going to get to it in a minute, but where Gus always seemed to bring in this good old boy network of guys that, were only in the ACC or SEC, or they might have had this experience, but really it was it always seemed to be he's bringing in his guys, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter if those guys seemed to be, not with this new era of college football or not, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It didn't really matter if that was the case. Just the only thing that seemed to matter to Gus is that he wanted to, get this guy in. And again, I kind of hinted at this last week, and Roger rightfully corrected me. I'm not going to bash Gus. And I don't even think what I just said necessarily is bashing Gus, because, I truly do believe that he tried his best. I just think that what he, the unfortunate reality is that the triggers that he pulled just didn't quite work here for where we're at as a program. And I'm not even talking about the level of where we're at as a program. It's just we have some unique things at UCF that are hard to understand when you've been somewhere else for so long. And the good news is not all this staff has been connected to UCF for that long, but even the couple of years and being a part of that history for Scottfrost, and then some of the other pieces of the staff, I just think that it's all bringing it together to be hopefully a great collaboration. And obviously the proof is going to be in the pudding once we start putting a hand in the ground that really matters in the fall. But I'm encouraged by the staff that he put together, because I think it really shows some maturity and kind of how Scottfrost is not just trying to recapture what he was here, but actually trying to show you that he can get even better. So
yeah, and I think you touched on it with Coach Duval. We as athletes, we spend more time with the weight coach than we do with our coaches.
Oh yeah, man! I said it last week as well. Yeah. We were like, I couldn't wait to collaborate with you on it, because it's so true, man.
Yeah, like that is who, day in, day out.
For periods of the year, that's the only person you're allowed to see. I don't know how it is now. it may be more free for all now, but you weren't even allowed to see the head coach for certain times a year.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's that point in like where they're out recruiting. All the coaches are just out recruiting, and it's just you are with your weight coach. That's who that first part starts. I think that's why it was important to, in my opinion, to get him there, because he is like the glue to everything. He's the one that's trying to foster what Coach Frost wants out of his athletes, out of the guys to be developed, but also bridging us for that relationship in the weight room. And also, this is what Coach Frost wants. This is what he wants. I mean, Coach Duval met with every single one of us, from, the top dogs and Shaquille, all those guys, to, even the walk-ons. And like, Frost wants this development path for you. And it wasn't just like, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It was, we all had 15-minute, 20-minute sessions, and we had the list, and it was over a couple of weeks, just to hit everybody, So I think that's what, the culture he is there's nobody bigger than the other, there's nobody better than the other. Obviously there's hierarchy, that's just the reality of it. But he doesn't, when you're in the weight room, the only person that's treated different, I mean, just like on the football field, is the quarterback, because there's certain things they can't do, but everybody else, it is an attack mentality. And then you also touched on like Beck and Milton as holdovers. I think it is important to have those kind of guys as well, because, Mackenzie has, first of all, Coach Beck has played at the highest level of UCF, maybe not the highest conference-wise, but as far as being All-American, all-conference level player at this school.
Yeah, he's a legend.
He's a legend. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. Mackenzie Milton, you can argue, is the most exciting player to play at UCF. The most, I wouldn't say dominant, but the most, just as far as gravitas and what they, the kids say now, aura.
Like the wow factor, right?
The aura and the wow factor.
Let's face it, he's on the Mount Rushmore at UCF.
For sure.
There's no doubt that KZ's on the Mount Rushmore. Like,
exactly.
He's a top 5 best UCF player of all time. You can argue who's the top QB or the top player to ever play for UCF, but there's no argument that he's top 5.
Exactly. And I think just all the exciting players we've seen, that speaks volumes. Like, he is one of the main reasons UCF's where it's at now. And I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Just the style of play he did, the elite, the flair, that was what our brand was 7 years ago. It was UCF fast, UCF fierce. Now, and I think, speaking to Frost, he understands it's almost time. Like, now I feel good to put that in the past. I'm like, we can not forget, but like, we can move on from that, because we're going to build something better. And I think that's all we ever wanted. If we can get back to that level of play in this conference, it will be better. That's just the reality of it. We're in the Big 12, Power 4. We're going to soon be getting the money to elevate us to that level. And I think Frost, realizing that, knew, I'm not going to try to recapture the same magic and just bring everybody back. I think that's just, like you said, the maturity, because it's easy. It was easy. I'm not going to lie. It was easier to be always doubted in playing football. It's so much harder when the bullseye's on your back. That's why, I always give props to that 2018 team. It's hard to come back.
They should, right? Yeah.
And we kind of forget about them a little bit just because they didn't go undefeated,
Barely.
But I mean, like, that just speaks volume. Like, we don't really talk about them like we should. And I didn't even play on that team, but just to come back the next year and run the table again when you're you're the big dog now. It's just, that's harder than what we did, as we were the underdogs a lot, and we played that card until, after the Peach Bowl, we weren't, but like, so I think Frost, he understands it. He gets it, which is why you see that healthy blend of everybody. A lot of these guys can recruit Florida well. That's your bread and butter in the state. Recruit the heck out of the state of Florida. Like I've always said, if 85 to 90% of your players are from Florida, you're going to have a good football team. That's just the reality of it, because the 3-star guys here are better than a lot of 4-star guys at a lot of other states. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be exciting. And, we'll get into, some of the – this isn't the whole staff. There's a lot of guys I know in my timeline that they were important to my development, which was like the analyst, like you're saying, Josh, like the analyst, the GAs, So yeah.
Well, let's talk about that, because you talked about some things behind the scenes that we didn't put out there because you weren't comfortable. But you know some people who are analysts on this team that you've played with or worked with. So
Yeah.
we can talk a little bit about them and how you think they might fit into helping the team succeed in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, just talking to who you're talking to, Demeitre Brim, Coach Brim. He played with me from 2014 to 16. He was one of our captains, Coach Frost's first year. And then after that, he ended up going to coach with Coach Frost in Nebraska. So he's coming back as an analyst. I think he posted on Instagram a few days ago. He was the D-line coach at Lehigh. So he had, got some time to get his own room, work with. I don't know exactly, who he's going to be working with or what. Probably in the front on defense. But yeah, I mean, he's a guy who he understands the culture. He was here for that first year, and sadly, he was a senior, so he had to graduate. But he's gonna understand those first year growing pains. We had so many growing pains from just, even him as a senior, like trying to get all the seniors on board, because there's a little resistance. People forget about it as well. We had a lot of resistance that year. We had a lot of resistance the year we went on the field. That's just the reality of dealing with 85 to 120, alpha male men playing football. That there's going to be resistance. So he's going to be able to fit in smoothly, not only what he can bring on the field as a coach, because he's a great coach. He's been in it now, 7 years, 8 years. He's gotten a lot of experience, a lot of different, guys and talents. But he was in our shoes. He's going to be in a lot of these senior shoes that they have 1 year with Coach Frost and that's it. They might feel like, dang, I wish I had another year with Coach Frost, because all those seniors did. They were like, I wish I had one more year. But he's gonna be able to help them maximize it immediately. But yeah, so I know he's gonna be there for a fact.
From a fan base perspective, like if you're a UCF football fan, you should know the name Demeitre Brim. I mean, like he's a guy that like he was a dude in those eras.
Yeah, like if he had another year with Coach Frost, he would have been all conference. I mean, he was all conference before that, but he would have been like a very, very high draft pick. Like, it's just one of those things where he had 1 year left and the injuries kind of hampered him. Like he was an NFL player. It's just injuries got the best of him. But yeah, I mean, he was a dude. I don't know if people remember. Maybe we could post it on here somewhere. But like he had the Michigan hit. I don't know if people remember that. He destroyed that running back. I mean, he got ejected, and this is like when targeting first.
Oh, that was like early on in the targeting game. Yeah. I remember how long that replay.
The review. Exactly.
That's so funny you mentioned that, because I had totally forgot about that. And then you just clicked for me.
Yeah, it was one of those things. Like if you see it now, it'd probably take them 10 seconds, 15 seconds. But like that was right when
it started.
Targeting started. So like it was a good 3 to 5 minutes in the game where we were just like, is he gonna be in or like what? Like we're losing the momentum of this game, But yeah, like he was a monster player, man. He was a beast. He was everything you want in a middle linebacker. Big, strong, athletic strike. And again, he played here, so he gets it, and I think you can never have enough of those guys. So yeah, I know him for a fact as an analyst. That's really the only person I know like 100%, other than that, they're going to fill out. And to me, those are like the second to third most important people, because those are the guys that do a lot of the behind the scenes work. They do a lot of the dirty work. They do a lot of the hands-on critiquing, because that's what they're looking for. And it's one of those things where that was pivotal in my development. Was we had Jack Cooper, and he helped me just fix a lot, even just from my ankle flexion, because that's what he looks at, on tape, those small little details. Whereas, the assistants and stuff look at this, the bigger picture things.
Right.
So it looks like we have all the staff done. Most of the analysts look like they're here. I think Jason Johnson was another former player. I don't think you played with him though, Trey. I think he might have been. Was
Jordan Johnson?
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Oh, I played with Jordan. I played with JJ.
Okay.
Jason
Johnson's a friend of mine.
I played with JJ. He's awesome. O-line guy.
Yeah, it's when, as fans, I think
for the record, Trey did not play with Jason Johnson, so you're
I
right.
did not play with Jason Johnson.
You were right
Correct.
about that.
Yeah, he's
But
the
I'm
third
sorry.
Johnson.
Go
right?
ahead, Josh. I'll just
Yeah. There's only a few of them. It's like all the Pouncies. Now, so the one thing I feel like we can agree to as a fan base is at the end of last year and maybe midway through last year, and I think it might have started at the game up in the Swamp. We had this. It seemed like the fan base had this collective WTF moment, right? Where what we hear and what we see don't match. The preseason hype, the what we expect of a team, the effort, the hustle, the camaraderie, and I don't think it was all name, image, and likeness. I don't think that was it. There was just something off about that team, and that does happen. We've all I'm in bowling, right? But still 4 people on a team, competitive Baker style bowling, 5 there. But I've been on these type of teams where you're just like, what is going on? Why these things are not in sync? We're not talking. Everyone is just off. And I feel like last year was that. And that to me is why I'm really excited about the staff. Look, I have absolutely no expectations of next year, and I will always say that I always want us to win, and it's realistic that who the heck knows? I mean, I don't even know Bill Belichick is going to be coaching UNC at that time, right? We have 2 gimmies, UNC at home, and then a whole bunch of interesting matchups who, whether they're home or away, Baylor might be different. Well, actually, we know if they're home or away. Baylor at Waco, BYU at Provo. Some of these, Baylor, who knows? BYU, who knows? Cincinnati, we should beat them, I hope, right? Like, there's a couple of people on here, like, who knows if West Virginia is going to be, doing what they're doing in basketball, and that's not the transition yet. But they're doing quite good in basketball this year. Maybe they're going to be knocking out of the park next year in football, or later this year in football. So we have this very interesting schedule where I can see anything from 4 wins to we might be 9-4 by the end of the season. So it's a really intriguing part of where we're at, and I feel like the staff is going to bring, at minimum, the vibes, going to bring the juice, and cares. I feel like people might internally care about what the heck is going on in this program a bit more than last year, and maybe that's a knock on Coach Malzahn. I don't necessarily think so, but I just inherently know that when you get these former players here, when you get Coach Frost back in the type of mentality and the words he's saying at these press conferences and showing up in the student section with a shirt or a hoodie that I want to find out where you can get, that's what a lot of the fans have been used to. Even when George O'Leary was here, I mean, he wasn't, the Riz King or anything, right? But you knew what you were getting. Even Trey committed to UCF with GOL because you knew what you were getting. Yep. And it just feels like the last year is a little bit off.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't know.
Yeah. So I was going to transition because we need to pivot.
Pivot, but
okay. I'll let you know. One last one.
But I was just gonna say that, it feels like already, and just what you're talking about, it feels like there's a good potential to bring in a bunch of get the players to buy into falling in love with the process as opposed to just falling in love with the results. And that's the way it felt like over the last year. It just felt so focused on desperately trying to get the results instead of just coming up with the right process and getting everybody to buy into that process and understanding that if everybody buys into it, the results are going to come. It's I just that part just it feels like we're really truly building something off a strong foundation already, and we haven't even seen anybody throw the football yet, for that matter, or do any type of drills in a spring practice. But it just felt like back then in 2016, 2017. We continued it on since then a little bit, but certainly back then, and then just the vibes, as you said, Josh, that we've seen from Frost and seen the construction of the staff. It just feels like that's the type of culture that he's trying to bring. So we'll go ahead and pivot after that. So
that works for me. As I am reminded that I was at spring practice in 2024, and I might have to send an email to see if I can possibly go back as well. So we will pivot. No need to pivot again. We want to talk about one last football thing, and this is a kind of, I wouldn't say it's a vibe check, but kind of fits the mood of the vibe check, and that is Ted Roof. Ted Roof is suing the UCF Athletics Association in the Ninth Judicial Circuit, which is here in Orange County, Florida, and also Osceola, if he really cared, for basically trying. I am not a lawyer. And if you really want to take a look at this, there's a lot of documentation online. You can find it with the clerk of the courts. You can find it if you're live. I'm just going to drop it right into the chat. Oh, it's not allowing me to throw that in the chat. Of course it won't. In essence, there was a clause within Ted Roof's contract that said if Gus Malzahn quits, retires, something, if Gus Malzahn is not here, UCF does not owe the remaining of Ted Roof's contract. So 39 days after Roof was terminated, he got a letter basically saying, well, now that Coach Gus is gone, we're not going to pay you out the rest of your money. In essence, this is very layman's terms. So I get it. You force someone to resign in 40 days. The person who was their manager resigns. You owe them a lot of money and go, well, you were still on in 2024, so we're going to try to do this other stuff. What do you think, generally speaking, about you? Here's the two questions. One, what do you think about UCF actually even trying to do this? First of all, one. Two, what do you think is going to be the outcome of this lawsuit, generally speaking?
So to quote Rounders, pay that man his money. I'm not a lawyer either, Josh. I certainly wouldn't pretend to be. I haven't done just full-blown research on this, but it seems like I maybe respect the fact that we're trying to save some money here, but it just seems a little bit nitpicky to try to even pull this clause, considering that he was not fired or forced to resign, or whatever terminology you want to use, because Gus Malzahn left and went to Florida State. He was fired for whatever reasons that they said just weren't working. And the fact of the matter is, they decided, meaning UCF in conjunction with Gus Malzahn, they decided that they weren't going to necessarily fire him with cause. Like, they weren't going to try at that time, the time they fired him. They didn't necessarily try to say that he was fired because he violated some sort of team rule or said something to a player that was inappropriate or whatever, abused his staff, if you will. Even though there's a lot that's coming out recently about his relationship with his staff, but just everything about it didn't seem like that's what they ever put in paperwork at that time, try to even cover their, at that time. And so I think that this is in my opinion, kind of retroactively trying to enforce this, and you're not going to pay the guy. Like, I just feel like it's a little bit petty at this point. And I would rather move on completely from the Malzahn era and just settle with this guy right away. And we don't have to ever talk about it again, even though I suggested that we talk about it because it is a relevant story to UCF football.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm not a lawyer. I can't tell you all the loopholes and the small words that can determine if you get money or not. But what I read, it's $50,000. Granted, that's a lot of money.
No, it's more than that. No. So here's what it is. It's like $500,000.
Yeah, it's like
okay.
Yeah. So no. So after $50,000, it's another type of conversation when it comes to damages and stuff. No, what it was is so, and I was wrong. It was 33 days after Roof was fired that Gus resigned, and then less than 7 days after that, well, it was 39 days after Roof was terminated, and they got their Roof got a letter, right? So that 39 days, they tried to use this clause in the event of the resignation by Gus Malzahn as head coach. This agreement may be terminated, and the employee shall be entitled to receive 90 days of pay at the $750,000 rate. So before, he was getting $750. What they're trying to pay him is $187. That's the difference. So basically, wow. Yeah. So we're talking. It's not small change. No.
Yeah. Okay. So that changes everything.
It's $500,000.
$500,000 is a lot of money to take away or withhold from somebody.
Yeah.
But I'm with you, Ben. I'm just like, let's just move on, start fresh. Yeah. You don't want anything holding a cloud over or any kind of news that you don't want. Let's just try to move past it. Fresh start. That's how I see it. Now, I'm not saying, hey, just write them a check of $500,000. I don't have that money, so I don't know if that's what the issue is. I mean, I know that's the issue, but like, is UCF just trying to get a loophole and not pay them because they just don't want to pay them, or is it that they don't have the money? Which that I know they do. It's just maybe they're penny pinching. But yeah, I'm just like, just move on. Give the man his money. He paid his dues. He tried his best. We're not going to get upset about that.
Yeah, so what I think, if I had to guess, the letter, this is just a negotiation, and I think what they're trying to do is, instead of doing the full 750 on, get to something closer, get attorney's fees out of the way, get it out. I don't think this is going to be litigated. I think this will be like the other 90% of cases that are settled before it comes to a trial. They're trying to do breach of contract, and to be honest, I am not a lawyer. It doesn't look great. I think that's what we all kind of agree on. And maybe you save yourself $100,000, $200,000. Maybe, I don't know. We have the money. We'd probably rather use it on someone else, but this is the game that we all have to play. So I think UCF is trying to save a little money. Not that they need it, but maybe there's something we don't know behind the scenes where they're like, no, Gus gave his buddy Gus already knew he was out the door. He gave his buddy an out to get paid, and so he wouldn't, so he isn't like fending for his livelihood next year, like a lot of others who were on the staff. And there's some other things going on. We will see. I don't think this is going to be a trial, and I do think it'll be settled, and we'll see. It's not a great look, but I will say this. If you're another coach, first of all, you probably don't care because this is kind of what happens all the time. And second, maybe I don't think a coach is not going to come here because of this. So I'm just not too worried about it. It's just not the best look. And truth be told, unless you're listening to this podcast or you are this is like deep UCF fan, right? This is a fanatic of fan, right? Most people don't even know this even exists. Heck, right. I bet you there are a bunch of people in the courthouse or the clerk of the courts don't even know this exists. It's just one other piece of paper in their intake system. So we don't want to talk about that because we talk about all things UCF. All right, we're going to pivot to text talk. And the text talk this week is going to be pretty lonely. So So we're going to talk about the TCU UCF basketball game right after this. And the reason we're going to talk about that is because it was a great game. And I was there. Some of Ben's friends were there. Some of my friends were there and didn't even let me know in text beforehand. I'm like, what? I found out when I was at a campfire hanging out with them afterwards.
Josh is salty.
It's not salty, just like, I do this stuff. Like, they know I have, and I'm on the podcast. Why wouldn't you just like, hey, we're hanging out. Do you want to drop on by? So I counted it. I'm at the basketball game and I go about 14 texts after Trey sent some fire emojis and send pics. And I realizing this is not like a short amount of time. Like, I started chatting about 4:00 and by 4:40, I get not one response. And so my text is, till now, I've always got by on my own. I really never texted till I met you, and now it chills me to the bone. Why am I texting alone? And the best part about that is, and I think that was it Alan or someone? Trey spoiled it. I love it. So Dr. Rob has been on one podcast me and Roger did for business like 2 years ago, and he's just in the text chat, which is great. Dr. Rob is like, he spoiled the Trey. We should have seen how long Josh would talk to himself. So that was the text talk. And I will say, in the 40 minutes where you guys were at like birthday parties and stuff, I actually think Roger and Ben were both at like birthday parties, and Trey, at least he was responding. I said, Hall is NBA Jam on fire, and that was how we started. So let's start with you, Ben. Talk about that game in the context from your what you saw when you had a chance to look at it, and I'll give you some of the in the moment updates too, because it was
for sure. I couldn't watch the game live. Like I said, I was at a birthday party, and so I couldn't watch the game live. It was just I was just keeping up with it kind of on my phone. When you subscribe to UCF basketball Twitter, you just kind of like, I get the updates and I see what's going on, and typically I can figure out how the game is going based on the alerts that I'm getting on my phone. And luckily I was getting very good positive feedback. And so I was able to watch the game back. And it's kind of, so just a side note about this game, TCU's starting center, Ernest Uday Jr. He's a kid that I've known him I use that term known him lightly, like we've met a few times, but I followed him since he was a freshman at Dr. Phillips High School. That's I'm an alum of Dr. Phillips, and the teams that he was on in Dr. Phillips, he brought us our first basketball state championship, and former UCF assistant Ben Witherspoon was the head coach on those teams, and Ernest was just the type of guy that was kind of the anchor in the middle for those teams. And so I followed the kid since he was, 14, 15 years old on Dr. Phillips varsity. So it was cool to see him come back home. And for the most part, he held his own. He kind of showed out on his home, his homecoming. So it was cool to see him there. He originally went to Kansas and then transferred to TCU a couple seasons ago. And I saw him shatter a backboard in high school. That was kind of cool. But anyways, that's enough about the other team, because really TCU just didn't overall, they just couldn't make a shot. And for the majority of that, the reason why that was a high percentage of why that was is obviously we did buckle down and play some pretty good defense. We didn't have a ton of steals in this game, but we had 7 steals. We didn't need to necessarily. We were playing solid defense. Like we were forcing them to take shots from deep, which they could not hit. They started out the game 0 for 13. 0 for 12 in the first half, and it extended to the second half, and they went 0 for 14. And Josh, you can say how the student section.
So the student section got back to the point, and I hope we have some students that listening. We'll see. This was close to the Rowdy Knights level.
Right.
Like, it was when we knew things about the other team, and we would like poke and prod at them and make signs dedicated to one person and something that we knew they hated. This was phenomenal. And I don't know where it started, but it definitely started at about 0 for 12. And
I think they realized at halftime, right? They probably
yeah.
realized that, oh shoot, they haven't made a three yet. And
So
then every
the 0 for 12 was light. And then the
Okay.
0 for 13 was bigger and a big applause. And I think people saw it. And it got to, I'm in the nice, not the nicer section, but I was.
I've sat in your seats before. Those seats are nice.
I love the seats. It's we're grown folks, right?
Right.
And it got here. It got to the club. It got to everywhere. And when it was 14, it was loud. And I will tell you, not only was it loud, you saw people jab stepping on three and thinking about it and then going in instead of taking the small space that they had on the, like, that actually changed shots. You can see it in the footwork of the TCU players. And I wish they would have kept it up after they hit one, because I think it was 1 for 14 and they hit none the rest of the, so
yeah, they were 1
19 is still a perfect
1 for 20 on the game from 3
yeah.
It's crazy.
And they couldn't hit the broadside of the barn, and a lot of that was defense. And I talked about it in the short, I talked about it in the chat, and even Johnny Dawkins on the post game said that they kind of drilled defense and rebounding for about 2 days.
Well, when you give up 108 points in regulation on the road versus arguably the best team in the country, but so 108 points is 108 points.
Correct. So yeah, absolutely. You can, forgetting Hall being on absolute fire with 3 threes to start, and he even heat checked and got one in. Let's take even that out of the equation. The defensive, the help was good. And I know you're talking about Cham doing better and better, and he is doing better and better. And you still see some of the freshmen, like, you're going way too far out to the three, and I know you can't get back to the paint that quickly. And I've seen a couple of times where other teammates got fouls because they were trying to help his lack of getting back quick enough. That happened 2 or 3 times. And I'll take everything else that came with it. So
5 blocks. I mean, but that's the thing in the first half. Like, you talk about the defense, like, he was able to really control the middle. Like, he controlled the paint so well, and he had 2 blocks on a single play, got the rebound, throws it ahead. I mean, and then as a trailer comes down, it has that dunk. Like, Dior Johnson, I think, gave him like a little shovel pass on the inside. Like, I continue to be impressed, I should say, with Mustafa Cham. Like, he doesn't seem to be fading away in his freshman season. He seems to be just like getting a hold of what it's like to be a player of his size and ability in the best conference, in arguably the best conference in basketball. He seems to be growing and getting better every game, and it's just very impressive to me. I mean, he was 2 for 3 from the 3-point line this game. I don't want him to think he's an all-star shooter all of a sudden, but by the same token, if he has the threat of being able to step out there and drop a 3, I mean, that's nothing but a good thing in my opinion. So
he was 2 for 2 to start. He was 2 for 2 to start, and he had more threes than TCU's entire team.
Yeah,
and the third one was close. The third one was
point.
Close, but yeah, they were kind of nice.
I mean, the game was just great. One of the things I do remember from the text talk, which is true, is towards the end of the game. And I want to talk a lot about different aspects of this, but so I certainly don't want to talk about the end of the game necessarily, but it's just towards the end of the game, you said, Josh, like, in one of your many talks to yourself, you said, I think this is it. I think this is the most complete, game that we've seen them play from start to finish. And statistically it was, right. We started out the game on a 13-0 run, and midway, actually about 7 minutes left in this first half, we popped another 12-0 run. I talk about the 13-0 run in the beginning. By the way, that was 11-0 run. That was just Keyshawn Hall.
Yeah.
Keyshawn Hall had the first 11 points of this game. TCU didn't score until it was 13-2. So we just got off to such a hot start, something that we don't do as well this season, certainly. But we kind of showed that from the beginning, played great defense throughout. It was evident that the defensive concepts that Johnny Dawkins is so well known for with his teams. And I mentioned in my stat last week, just that we haven't seen as much of that this season. It's very evident that they really focused on that in practice. And it was just great to see, like, and this is twice now, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get beat by 51 at home to Kansas, right?
Yeah.
And as much as I want to stop saying that, obviously we got a big game coming up. But we get beat by a lot at home. We get demoralized, and what could have extended beyond that game. Then we come back the next game and play an opponent that is still a Big 12 opponent, and we have to respect everybody in this conference, but they're not at the level of Kansas, right? And we match up better than them. I think Kansas is just a matchup nightmare for us. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
And so Kansas is one of those teams that I think is just a matchup nightmare for us. And we got smashed at home, and we didn't let that carry over to the next game. In fact, against Colorado, we showed a ton of fight in that game and wound up pulling away at the end and kind of putting no doubt that we were going to win it. Now, and they gave us their best shot in that game.
Yeah.
And then we go on the road to arguably the best team in the conference, let alone the best team in the country potentially, in Iowa State, who has the second longest win streak at home, and their atmosphere is ridiculous. And we get beat in the last 30 minutes of the game. We get beat by, and we really just kind of get beat down, and we lose by 25. We give up 108 points. We might have scored, 83 ourselves, but we lose by 25. And we come back home, we regroup, and we put together what is, as you said, probably the best, most complete team win of the season. From start to finish, as far as just how we dominated them. It was never in doubt. 13-0 to start, and we wound up winning by 28. And so I think those two kind of bounce back wins that we've had in conference play, I just think shows me a lot about this team, how they remain confident, how they remain prepared despite what happened in the previous game. They're not like down on themselves that they may not be at the Kansas or ISU level or even, hey, we dropped one at Houston, so we're going to feel sorry for ourselves. They're not down on themselves because of the tight or the, hurtful losses that they've had. They refocus, they focus on the next game, and they get it done. I mean, 45% field goal percentage, 42% 3-point percentage in this game, 82% from the line. We talked about at Iowa State, they didn't really get to the line as often as they should. And this game we're 18 for 22 from the line, and we made 18 free throws. They only shot 15 as a team. So they were 11 for 15, which isn't terrible, but they only shot 15 free throws and we made 18. So that's always Johnny Dawkins' goal, is to make more free throws than the other team attempts. And I think that's some of the stats to look at. And then some of the good individual performances. I mean, Jordan Ivy-Curry only had 14 points in the game, which is great, but all 14 of those were in the second half. And then DJ just kind of continues to do what he does. Debo Coleman, he really, he just does a lot of those hustle plays. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't show up in the stats, but there's a reason why he averages about 30 minutes a game, because when he's on the floor, we're a better overall basketball team just because he does a lot of those little things. There was a point after our second big run in the first half where TCU kind of got in a little bit of a rhythm and they started chipping away at it, and they cut it to about 10 it wasn't quite before the half yet, but it was a couple minutes left in the half. They cut it to 10. And he gets this rebound and put back on the offensive end that was at that moment was just a huge one. It was a huge bucket at that time to just kind of, continue to accelerate and push the lead. And so this team is just dynamic. I think our starters in general are extremely dynamic, and we need to see a little bit we need to see a couple more players step up. I don't know if we're ever going to get Jalen Sellers back this season, but we've seen great flashes of JJ Taylor. We've seen plays from Benny Williams. We've seen the potential of Mikey Williams. And we've seen some good minutes, good quality stuff from a guy like Dior Johnson coming in and kind of playing a few minutes here and there and kind of providing a little bit of a spark off the bench. But I think overall, as we get into February and get into what is actually the softest part of our schedule compared to the first half, it's still very, very tough. We need a few more players to have a really solid 8-man rotation, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I will tell you, it's, Nils, we haven't seen him a lot, right? But he's kind of fallen all the way down because he's just, it's either, there could be a lot of reasons, but there's a lot of other guys that are stepping up.
I mean, I think that's Mikey. I think you got to give those minutes to Mikey. His ceiling is much higher than Nils Machowski. It's just the way it goes.
And the reality is, not only that, but it's kind of intriguing. You can see if you're watching Mikey, you can see his game mature. You can see where he's trying to take educated steal opportunities, where he's placing hands in passing lanes purposefully. He's very quick to get back in a pretty darn good defensive position. A couple times people have blown by him, but that happens to everyone. So you see there's these pieces of it, and the more time he gets, the more confidence he gets, the better I think he'll be. And I don't think he was there at the beginning of the season because he's just kind of getting back into everything. I think he was late to coming to UCF because of his other things going on in life. And you can now see it, like, it's kind of hard to put him in versus Kansas, right? I think he'll probably pop in at this point, but putting him against Iowa State or Kansas or whatnot, you want as much DJ as you can get.
Yeah.
So I understand that, but but that's 6, right? And I agree with JJ and Dior. There's a couple pieces that come in, and to your point with Kansas, like Cham is getting dominated by Hunter Dickinson. He is. He does.
Well, I mean, it's a matter of
Benny and Rokas can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really just what's behind Cham. I mean, it's just you can't have what happened in the first Kansas game is that Cham got his second foul about 6 minutes into the game. We were down by 6 at that point, and Hunter Dickinson went on 12-0 run by himself. Like we were actually okay when Cham was actually in the game. By the time he ever could get even back into the game, at that point, the game was completely out of hand. It was over. We were down by at least 20, and it's just kind of what's the point of that? I think it'll be interesting tomorrow night. It'll be interesting tomorrow night to see what he learned from that first matchup, to see if like more of those indications of his talent level and his energy and his, everything that he brings to the game, going into an environment like Kansas, and see if he's one of those, those baseball power hitters that they face the pitcher for the second time, and and you can see how well they learn from the first time. I just like maybe I'm hoping against hope here, but like if he can stay in the game tomorrow night, I don't know. Like I'm not saying that I'm not giving us a chance necessarily to win that game, but it's not a crazy statement, in my opinion, to say that if Chiam can stay out of foul trouble, that we might actually have a chance. Because you're right. I mean, he's going to have his freshman moments. There's no doubt about that. And Kansas is the type of team with Hunter Dickinson that's going to take advantage of those freshman moments. But by the same token, he's also going to provide you with some pretty dynamic things as well. And the problem is for me that I just wish we had more depth behind him. I actually think Benny Williams has kind of regressed a little bit. And Rokas, I think Rokas was more. You saw flashes of good things that he could do when we were playing against lesser opponents in the non-conference, and I think he's gotten. I think whereas Benny Williams has kind of faded away a little bit, where his style of play I don't think works for the Big 12 wholeheartedly, and I don't really want to criticize. It's not really a criticism on him. I just think it's just the way he's matched up so far. Where Jesus, I just feel like, which I guess that's how you pronounce his name, because the last like 6 or 7 games, that's how the commentators have pronounced his game, which it was completely a different pronunciation in the non-con. But Rokas Jesus, I honestly think he's gotten exposed once we got into Big 12 play, in particular, as I've said numerous times, like in particular on the defensive end.
He's being put in at like 13 minutes to get through to the under 12, and sometimes we'll pick up
a blow, right? Like that's it.
And sadly, and this is one thing leads to another. When he's in, if he's open, he's shooting, and they're not like bad shots, but
I don't think he's necessarily as big of a liability on the offensive end. I think he's got some pretty good touch around the basket. I don't want him to be a black hole, which you're right. Like sometimes he gets so anxious and he just the ball's not coming out if it goes into him. But by the same token, he's such a defensive liability at this point. Like you can't play him longer than 5-6 minutes. You just need him. It's just, especially when you're going up against a team that has good big men.
That's it. And I was looking at Kansas' schedule. I mean, their only losses are pretty much the top 25 teams, or should be close to it. Houston, Iowa State, West Virginia is again a really solid team. And of course, we faced them. We yet again faced them after a loss.
Right?
At a lightly gut wrenching loss. Missouri is doing really good this year, and Creighton is third in the Big East. They're all right. They're only I would say bad loss, and it's really not a bad loss, to be honest.
I mean, any SEC team isn't a bad loss at this point. SEC team statistically and potentially objectively is the best conference in basketball this season.
Year. Yeah, I know. Isn't it weird that there's probably 12 teams from the SEC that are going to be in the NCAA tournament, and maybe 4 from the ACC?
ACC is having a terrible year. They're very much a terrible year by their standards. They're very much having a down year. I mean, it's kind of Duke and who else, right? Like, because they just don't have anywhere near the depth of teams that Big 12 and SEC and Big 10 have. Like, it's just not even close to that. Even Big East, like the ACC is just. They're sinking to a level that is just very curious. But then again, it's the era of college athletics where any team can be good, any team can be bad at any moment.
Well, that's why NC State's actually hanging with Duke, only down by 1 with 4 minutes left right now, and they were leading in the half. So you're right. And any team can beat any team. We got Mike saying Clemson's in too. After that, it's stretching. Yeah, ACC is interesting this year. And listen, that's why when you see these who's in, who's out, who are locks, that UCF is usually bubble in or close, and we know how good we are as a team. There's like when you get from us up through West Virginia all the way up to Iowa State, like this is a solid conference. I'll say the bottom of the conference is not. I don't think it's not as good as last year. We were in the bottom of the conference last year, but I agree to Mike's point that we have like between Kansas, Houston, Iowa State, and then there's these 3 or 4 teams that kind of rotate into the top 25. It's good. And and last for Mike, and at least we're not in the ACC. And you are right, because if you look after, and the Big East belongs in the Power 5, if you will, of basketball, right? If you look Big East and everyone else, who you got? It's Memphis. That's it. It's yeah. I mean, and this is when we talk about both football and basketball, these are the things that made a lot of UCF fans really excited to get out of the AAC. It's interesting because we're so accustomed, like Ben, when you were around, like it was just, you need 2 good years with like Dexter Lions, right, to get into the NCAA tournament, and then just get beaten down by Pittsburgh. Even though we try to shoot our way out of it.
Hey, we Rob Ross with those threes. We took the lead with about 2 minutes left of the game.
No. Rob Ross had like 27 in that game or something like that?
No, you're thinking of the following year where Gary Johnson had that. But Rob did come off the bench and hit like 4 straight threes and brought us back into it. Yeah. Yeah. Pittsburgh. But you might be thinking about Gary Johnson against UConn the following year.
Yes.
Shout out to Gary. He's going to be in town this weekend too. It's alumni weekend for UCF. So UCF
Talk about that. What?
Yeah, I would. Thank you for asking that, because I definitely wanted to say it on here, and I hope that any UCF basketball fan comes out to the games, but in particular, if you are able to this Saturday. So it's UCF basketball alumni weekend. All the guys are getting back together, but in particular the teams that I was a part of, so the 04-05 back-to-back ASUN championship teams. Obviously 05 was 20 years ago, and so we're going to celebrate that. We're going to celebrate that this weekend. So we have alumni weekend every year on the basketball alumni, but for the most part every year. But this year is a little bit special for guys like me. I was on the 04 team that won the first of the back-to-back conference championship teams. And so those teams, those 2 years, will be honored in the first half of the UCF basketball game this Saturday against BYU. And so we're really excited to get together. And there's going to be a couple guys in particular, one guy that I just mentioned that I haven't seen in almost 20 years in Gary Johnson. And so a number of those guys that I play with, like Roberto Morantine, who's obviously from Spain, who lives in Spain, and had played professional basketball in Spain and during his career. And then Gary Johnson, who played in Europe and Asia, played in Japan as a little bit of his career, along with and then Dexter Lyons, who played in Japan, who is local now to, or I should say, lives in his hometown still in Atlanta. But we've got all of us are coming back. I mean, Roberto is coming back. He's going to be in town. For the most part, almost every member of that team, I believe, with the exception of a couple, will be back and in Addition Financial Arena this weekend. And so if you were a Rowdy Knight or a Kirk's Jerks back in the day, Coach will be back as well, of course, Drew Spira, his family. So we're just excited to get together. And it's really cool that this year, for us anyways, that we're going to be honored in the first half. And so we're probably that early 2000 kind of 2000 to about 2009 are probably the most active guys in our. We have like a UCF basketball alumni chat, like group chat that I'm sure Trey has with all of his guys from his era and all that stuff for football. But we're pretty active in kind of helping put together these alumni weekends. And Carlos McCants is just, he's just of Varsity Knights is just the best. And his whole team is just awesome. And Carlos doesn't get enough credit for what he does for UCF athletics alumni. And I just shout out to Carlos because he's just awesome. And so it's going to be a great weekend. We're super looking forward to it. And that'll be the BYU game at home this Saturday, February 1st. So
I might have to try to see if I could pull some executive privilege. I'm going to be taking my daughter to that game, so we'll have to see. Like, hey, this is the guy I'm on the podcast with every day.
Yeah, no,
she's going to look up and go.
Yeah, and my family will be with me as well.
Awesome.
So we definitely got to meet up at that game and see each other and everything, because it's going to be a fun day overall. I'm going to be coming, in true fashion. I'm going to be coming straight from my son's basketball game that I'm coaching, but by the same token, it'll be a blast. And just even to mention the BYU game, right? Like, so we got at Kansas tomorrow night.
Yeah,
we've got BYU at home on Saturday, as I mentioned. Then on February 5th, we have Cincinnati. We have and then we go February 8th, we go to Baylor. And then we get to come home and play Iowa State at home. And so the next 5 games, and I just mentioned, I've been saying for months now that the first 7 games that we had in conference were just an absolute gauntlet. We're now 4-4 after our first 8. But the next 5 games that I just mentioned there, Kansas, BYU, Cincinnati, at Baylor, Iowa State at home, those are 4 quad 1 games, and 1 of those is a quad 2 game. And so that's our next 5. So the opportunities, if you will, continue. The opportunities, if you will, continue to be right there for the taking for this UCF basketball team, because we go, even 2 and 3 in that stretch. That means that we probably could get 2 more quad 1 wins, or at the very least our first quad 2 win of the season, because we're only 0-1 in quad 2 games. We haven't really played too many quad 2 games. So we go 2 and 3 in that stretch, and that's another resume builder, as long as the 3 losses weren't complete blowouts. And it's not outside of the realm of the possibility that we could go 3-2 in that stretch, or some combination of that. So, more opportunities to come up. I think Baylor has a really, really good team, but and Cincinnati has played well. None of these games are going to be easy. There are no easy games in the Big 12, but it just goes to show you that our front-loaded schedule continues, and I think it really doesn't get different at all, in the sense of it's always going to be tough. The 20 games that we have in conference are going to be tough, but these next 5 are going to be kind of a really tough stretch before we get into a little bit of a lighter schedule. Slightly, we get to play the Oklahoma States of the conference, as opposed to the Baylors and Kansas and Iowa States.
Yeah, and I agree with Mike. If we go 3-2 and we steal one over Houston, Iowa State, we win tomorrow at Kansas. Yeah, we need it. To feel a lot more comfortable, we need one of those like top 10, top 25 ranked, top 15 net type of wins. And that's why a lot of people are just like, oh, about that Houston game at home, right? Because that would have been it. That stay the course. Yeah. But this is this is what we signed up for. And it's also why we can not have to like win every single game in the conference all the time. We can do what we need to and then steal one if possible. So Trey, if you are Trey is trying to get back in. That's why you keep seeing me looking over here. We're doing some side conversations on text to try to get Trey back in. So Trey is probably not going to talk too much about this stuff. So if he comes back in, we'll go to there. Obviously, we can't yell at Cloud. So we're gonna go and pivot to some other UCF news, which really, well, we're just going to get to that after we do the fun fact of the week. Let's talk about some listener love. We didn't get a lot of comments this week, perfectly fine, but what I did find when I started doing this, because as you might not know, gentle reader or listener, Alan didn't do the notes this week, and Roger didn't set up any of the other stuff. So this is straight up me and Ben and Trey might have went to something. It was pretty much me and Ben.
And no, bro.
It's just fair. He's like the thread, right? He's the thread for all the stuff. So I will say that we are starting to get more and more people subscribing through the shorts. So maybe that's why every single short I see every so often with a smaller audience is smash that subscribe button, because it actually does work. And I'll try to do some more of that stuff at BYU and maybe with Ben if we have some time.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
We'll see what we can do there. But yeah, I want to thank everyone for subscribing. We're doing our best here. You know, we all have jobs. We all love UCF sports, and we try to give you the best entertainment, or as a famous poet once said, edutainment as we can. So appreciate all of that. And maybe I just need to put my foot in my mouth more and say that we're going to beat Kansas, and then we'll get some more comments sometime soon. All right. So while we are moving on, Nobra, why don't you pop yourself back in? Because if Trey isn't on here, I need someone else to talk about the sometimes funny fact of the week.
So I'm not the only one guessing.
Yeah, so you're not the only one guessing. And I mean, Ben, unless
I got it right last week.
Yeah. This one you may. It's obscure, as I like to do, but it's UCF related this time, not the opponent. Ben, do you actually have a stat from the week of basketball that's intriguing? Because we kind of impromptu did that last time. So
no, I actually don't have a stat this week, because it was I did that on the fly last week, or just because we were fresh off of that giving up 108 points, and I was like, man, how many times have we given up 90 or more in the regular season? But no, I don't have a stat this week.
How many times did we start the game 13-0? No, we're not gonna. I will tell you, I don't know, that is a harder stat to get, but how many times did we open up the game with 3-pointers and lead 9-0 is probably rare too.
Or a single player going on an 11-0 run to start the game. That also would be interesting.
Also could be. So these are things for Alan to maybe research next week. Yeah. So well, actually, he was at the Heat game, and I think they beat the Magic without Butler, who walked out on practice again. He's not going to be on that team that much longer. All right. So this sometimes funny fact of the week. This will make it really simple, and also a segue to the other sports that Alan does not watch. So our men's tennis team is doing really, really well. They are on fire. They are 7-0 this season. They just beat number 6 Arizona, who has the number 5 and number 6 players in the nation, 4-3. Before this game, how many games have we lost in the first 6 games total? Is it more than 3 or less than 3? What do you think?
Say it again.
Sure. Yeah. It's a little convoluted. All right. So we beat Arizona, number 6 in the nation. We beat them 4-3.
This is
tennis. Yes. There's 7 points.
Tennis. Okay.
Do I have to explain the scoring? There's doubles and singles. There's 5 and 2. Yeah, right. Okay, you got it. Actually, I think it's 4 and 3. But everyone gets a point if you win your match. First to 4 wins. So we played 6 other teams before Arizona, and we beat Arizona 4-3. Of those 6 other teams,
Oh,
How
now I
many
know what you're saying.
points? Yeah, how many points have we lost total? Is it more or less than that 3?
Less.
Total. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna say it's a trick question and just say the same. But like, yeah, it sounds like we're blowing people out, and the 3 was like a total anomaly. But I'll just say the same.
Okay, well, Ben, you were on the right track. Think Mike's giving us tennis stuff on the side. You throw that in, Nobra, so we can do that. That's excellent. So
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, so the answer is over, but you are on the right track, Ben. We've only lost 7 points the entire season, and 3 of them were to Arizona, and 2 of which were to the top 5 and 6 player in the nation. So,
Wow.
yeah, so we were, and I'll segue this into the quick update on other sports. Alan doesn't watch. Mike, thank you very much for the exact. I knew it was a doubles and points from elsewhere. Was a piece of it. So men's tennis, all tennis. Let's start here. All tennis. We have not lost a match in any tennis game, period. The women are 3-0. The 3-0? Yeah, 3-0. The men are 7-0. So I'm going to start with the men's tennis. They are on fire. They are absolutely on fire. They're 7-0. They dominated Oklahoma State 4-0, like I was saying. And then I looked at the points because 4-3 is good, but how else have we? It's number 16 in the nation. How else are we doing? And we're blowing people out. You were 100% right, Ben. So we actually were down 3-1 in that game, and I think we lost the 2 to the number 5 and number 6, the 2 singles match, and it was 6-1, 6-3. It was like quick. I get it; they're really, really good. You're not number 6 in the nation for nothing. And then we came back and won the rest of the matches.
Wow, that's crazy.
So because of that, we're actually going to Waco, Texas, for the ITA Indoor Championships on February 14th to 18th. I think there's only 16 teams going, if I remember correctly. That's the first time we've ever done that in our history. So we're also going to visit the Cows on February 3rd in Tampa. And as I said earlier, we've only dropped 7 games this season, which is just floors me.
So you mentioned, Josh, and if you forgive me if you don't know this, it's all good. I'm putting you on the spot. But like, do we have like just really good individual players as well? Or are we just like consistent across the board? Or like, I mean, do we have a couple like superstars on our men's or women's tennis teams, or what? Like, what are some names to watch? Do you know?
So
and again, sorry if I'm putting you on the spot.
You are. I will tell you this. So from what I've read, we have one gentleman who is like ranked 63rd. Let me check that out. Because I was looking at the Arizona State games, and I have to look by schedule. One gentleman is like 63rd, but we don't have anyone like nationally ranked on our team when it comes to the women. Yeah.
Sounds like we just have some depth, and we're just like good, consistently good across the board. So our let's call it our 4th best tennis player is going to destroy the 4th best tennis player of any other team, something like that.
We have and there's it's a mix of juniors and seniors, right? It's a good team. Like it's
that's a good program.
To Lake Nona, like it's truthfully, like I want to go out to Lake Nona and see if it's watch a match. That's and I might be able to do that since some of them are 10 in the morning. So I'm able to. You know what? I'm thinking about it.
Josh is coming to a YouTube short near you.
We are. I'm looking at it like February 21st. I'm not going down to Tampa. There's no reason for me to go to Tampa. Gasparilla is already gone. February 21st at 10 a.m. Stetson versus UCF. I can make that. And they're also playing Troy at 5. I'd probably just get out of there and try to find some pickleball after that. So I mean that they're the women's team and the men's team are just really good. I didn't check on the women's team and how they are doing with their rankings. I think we only have one. I looked at the matchup because that's why I found the Arizona had the number 5th, and here it is. Yeah, the singles result, we lost 6-1, 6-3 both to the number 5 and number 6 person in the nation. No, actually incorrect. the 61st person in the nation is from Arizona. I was incorrect. We have no one ranked.
We have no
But
ranked players. Wow, and we're still
but
dominant.
Medi, remember we were talking about Medi last show. We were talking Medi Benchakroon, and I Medi, if I'm killing your name, please just call me out. And or UCF, put the pronunciations of people's names into your website, please. So he defeated 6164, the number 61 person in the nation, and we started just rocking the rest of it. So yeah, I think this is time this for at least the men's. I think the USTA, and I did say we're going to talk a little about tennis, USTA bringing what they did to Lake Nona, like having the USTA in Lake Nona and being 20 minutes from campus is good for everyone. It's just good for everyone. There's so many courts. We can bring all the people we need to bring in here. We do have a new coach, Lloyd Bruce Burgess, who came in on 2023. He's been doing pretty darn good. They've advanced the NCAA. They've done really, really good for the last couple of years. When we're beating UF in the first round of NCAA tournaments when they're ranked, it's nice. So yeah, this is like, even I'm looking at the notables from them, like the 9th best record in program history, the 2nd best percentage of any first year coaching staff from last year. Just really good things, like really good things. And obviously it's gone on. So Medi is 12-3 in the season as well. It's just ridiculous. So this is like, they're doing good enough where I'm thinking about going out to Lake Nona. Like that's how, and
that's a step.
that's a step.
That shows you, yeah.
I've been to women's soccer games. I've been to a lot of women's basketball games. I've been to the standard football and basketball. I've gone to a lot of different things because, as you know, I have a lot of students that are on these teams and have for decades. So I have supported in lots of ways. I might actually go out to a game now. But they're doing really, really well. So is women's tennis. They're on fire. They're ranked number 23rd right now. They are 3-0. They beat number 24 FSU. Woohoo! On the 25th, and they beat Columbia 4-2 on the 26th. Both of those teams were probably going to be in the NCAA tournament or pretty darn close. Their next game is on February 2nd in Orlando versus number 25 FIU. So last and unfortunately least at the moment, our women's basketball team. Man, I feel for Coach Cincha. This is this is not good. We followed up our last couple of losses with a loss to Iowa State at the Hilton last Saturday, 56-90. It's just not good. What do we get for that win? A matchup versus number 23 Baylor at home on Wednesday, January 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern. So I'm guessing, unless something really changes, another L. We do stay at home. There is potential relief in sight. We have a home game versus Houston on Saturday, February 1st at noon. We're looking for our first conference win. We're 0-8. Houston currently is 1-8. Maybe are you saying we might have a chance? So maybe by the time I speak to you next week, we will have a W. Yeah, I know that's the thing. I've been at coaches' practices. I see where they're trying to go. They brought in some bigs that are freshmen and need work. It's Mike, I agree. It sucks. It sucks. And truth be told, I believe that, I don't think if Coach Abe is coming through that door, we're top 25 team automatically. I really just don't. I think Neal is kind of a piece of this too. A little bit. I mean, women's basketball has always been like 20 really, really good teams and the rest. And
I think 20 is being generous. Women's basketball has usually been like 8 really good, good teams and the rest.
It's been thinning out a little bit because if you used to go for a bracket on a women's college basketball NCAA bracket,
all chalk.
It's pretty much the top line every time.
Right.
In the last couple of years, 12s have beaten 5s, right? Like it's getting a little bit better, but it's still, yeah.
There is a big talent disparity, much more parity in the on the men's side. It always has been. The pool of high caliber women's basketball players is just so much smaller, and so that's why the parity has not been there on the women's side for years. But you're right, Josh. I mean, you can get a little bit, you can spread that out a little bit more if you get a school out there that'll commit more to women's basketball with their pay for play program. But it is, though, even that being said, it's tough to see the 0-8. Like Mike said, we haven't won a conference game in a calendar year. Like it is just a rough start to the Big 12 for the women's basketball program that used to be really promising under Coach Abe, and Satia Messer had to kind of pick up the pieces, and I really feel for her. But by the same token, it's like eventually, and I don't know, I don't know all the ins and outs of her contract or or even if the seat is hot for her right now, but if we go over in conference, or if we only win a couple games, like it just feels like we're going to continue to take a look at that and see if we could get better. I do know that we've had some injuries this season, or at least I've followed that a little bit, enough to hear that. Also heard that we had a big time transfer center that is now, as of like a week ago, is no longer part of the roster. So whatever happened there, I don't know what happened. I don't know if there's anything on the dungeon or anything that's been said, but regardless, anything that I would say would just be rumors. But the reality, and the public reality, is that she's no longer part of the roster. She's not listed on the roster anymore. And she was supposed to be kind of a very important piece to this team. And so, you lose a player like that, you lose a few other players to injury. You're trying to get used to a new scheme. You're a young team. And on top of that, the Big 12 conference has some powerhouses in it in basketball for the women's side as well. We're about to play Baylor, number 23 in the country. So has won a championship over the last decade, at least one. And so yeah, it's a tough sledding, but man, if we win one or two games in conference at the most, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Satia Messer.
Yeah, and Emily Rodriguez is out too as well. And even on top of that, actually, I was wondering, okay, so what who I was talking about, the Orek and Gui from Sudan. I saw her when she was when I was at practice, and it might take a couple of years, but I feel like she both has the height, and there's some pieces to that happening. But yeah, I think we'll see if she's around for a little bit. But right now, it's just not. It's not.
We lost 9 straight. It's an over in conference. It's tough sled.
This it would be nice to get a win versus Houston on Saturday at
hopefully it happens for him.
That's what we're hoping for. So Mike's right. Mike's on fire today.
Yeah, appreciate you, Mike.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, there is talent on the team. There's this one freshman, I just can't pull her name off the top of my head. We were there as educators, right? And I'm pretty sure she was in my she's taking computer science classes, which is where I work. And I'm like, yeah, we had a quick chit chat, and it was really, really good. It was nice to see someone who was really intrigued with the stuff that I was actually doing. And when I was watching them doing a small scrimmage, she was pretty good. So I agree. The couple more years were good, but I don't know if we're gonna have a new coach by then. We'll see.
It feels like one of those programs, though, that especially with the house settlement coming up next year and like next fiscal year, like it feels like one of those programs that you get a little more rope at UCF as a women's basketball coach than you would certainly as a men's basketball coach, or certainly as a football coach. But even as I've said, Jenny Meyer getting fired after only one season. Like, I think even there's more spotlight on the volleyball program than there is the women's basketball program.
Yeah.
So you get a little more rope.
Yeah, I will say, okay, let's just do a quick hypothetical and then I think we're done. So you have a donor. Let's just say a donor wants to donate directly to women's basketball.
Sure.
Do you feel like with enough money, we'll call it like $5 million, that someone could pull Dawn Staley or Kim Caldwell out of South Carolina or Tennessee and bring them to, let's say UCF podcast, but anywhere with enough nil and enough money? Could someone buy?
No, $5 million wouldn't be enough. You got schools like LSU in South Carolina that they have more than that for just their pay for play program. They're so salary.
Yes, no, Mike. Yeah, it's nil. And like, what do you think? How much, Mike, this for you too. How much money do you think it would take to pull someone of that stature and the women needed to get like a top 20 team at this point?
Like 20 million probably, because you got probably 5 for the coach's salary and 15 for the players' salaries. I don't know.
I mean, it's interesting because like,
maybe that's crazy. Maybe 10 is a more realistic number. 5 for the coach and 5 for the players.
Yeah, it is intriguing, and I don't think that. Mike is at 10 million for nil. The idea of that being possible still scares me. Generally speaking, I know that's not happening at UCF. Like, listen, if I become well-to-do, the first thing I'm doing, I'm getting a bowling team at UCF.
Yeah, you gotta love it, but I mean, there's like $10 million isn't going to be injected into the women's basketball program anytime soon. It's just
and amazingly enough, I bet you even at UConn and at Tennessee and South Carolina, like they're more than break even. I don't think they're making as much money as other sports, but they're definitely not at a deficit, I would think, because they sell a ton of tickets. They have a ton of fans. And truth be told, that's where any player wants to be too. So you have to manufacture that piece of it too.
I mean, people said, like, I'm not going to pretend I know all the ins and outs of women's college basketball, but by the same token, I do know enough to know that, like, what Ohio State did in football this past year, LSU did that in women's basketball the last couple of years. I mean, they basically just they pushed all their chips in the middle, and their pay for play program was probably the biggest at LSU ever, and they won championships because of it.
Yeah, listen, we are an all-inclusive.
Clearly, we just talked about men's and women's tennis and women's basketball for a good 20 minutes there, along with Mike.
Listen, when your tennis teams are 10-0 collectively, you can't just like, it's the non-revenue sports, right?
Alan would have dropped off like a good.
He would be sleeping. He'd be sleeping. Well, here's the thing, that this is what we used to have 8, 10, 15 some odd years ago, where we had soccer like killing it, and we had all these other, baseball was solid, and when football wasn't that great, or if basketball wasn't doing as well as it is now, we would like to lean on like volleyball to be like, oh yeah, we're doing good. So I like that we have this forward momentum, because I mean, the fall semester sports, that was not. Listen, this is my segment. We were not doing good in fall semester sports last year. So, all right, Ben, do you have any final thoughts coming into the end of the podcast?
Yeah, just on the same note that you just talked about. I mean, I think spring sports are going to start popping up here, and baseball is, believe it or not, I mean, we're talking 2 weeks away from this Saturday, or I should say, excuse me, 2 weeks away from this Friday is our opening night game. So baseball's coming up, softball's coming up. We got to get Coach Rich back on the podcast, see how his team is shaping up this season. From what I do know about the team, I think we're going to have a pretty solid team that's going to be able to compete in the Big 12 on the baseball side. So I'm really excited to see what year 2 of Rich Wallace and this program is going to bring. I think it's going to be, very exciting. I think that we're gonna be able to make some noise this year, and we've got the players to do it. We got a number of preseason all conference picks. In particular, Dom Stagliano is kind of like leading that charge. But I'm excited to see what the baseball team's doing. Just because we were just talking about other sports there, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that, along with Dominic Castellano. There is both of those were all 12 players, all Big 12 players. And then besides baseball, obviously, I'm just excited for this weekend. I'm excited to see some of the guys that I played with back in the day, and hopefully we can put up a good showing tomorrow night at Kansas, whether we win or not, and then get right back to the winning ways at home on Saturday at 4:00 against BYU, which is a very good team in itself. And has a projected top 5 draft pick in Igor Demin, who is really good. And I'm excited to see him, not only watch him play live, but see how a guy like Keyshawn Hall or whoever is going to be winding up guarding him, how we can kind of show what we can do against a guy like that.
Yeah, I'm excited to go to the BYU game. Listen, we do win games when I attend games. Listen, it is not a big.
Hey, he was at the TCU game, guys.
I was at the TCU game, and I lost my voice a smidgen cheering, so that was nice. So for me, I'm looking forward to that game. I'm looking forward for the podcast next week to have a few more people on it. And this is most of the weekend I'm going to be with my daughter. My wife is hanging out with some friends and doing some other fun things, which I think is awesome. And so it's going to be a daddy-daughter type of weekend for a little while. So it should be fun. So that is how we're going to end. I hope you are going to have fun at the future UCF basketball games and sports that that Alan doesn't watch, really. He watches basketball. And let's just end it there. Go Knights.
Charge on.
And we have to be able to do it because it's just us two, and we don't have to combine.
Just